The sun was setting over Macomb, Oklahoma, casting long shadows over the quiet streets of the small town. It was September 15th, a day that would soon be etched into the memories of the townspeople. Melissa Grange, known for her infectious smile and the warmth she spread wherever she went, left her home that evening with a man no one recognized. Her departure was witnessed by a few neighbors who happened to be enjoying the mild autumn air. As Melissa stepped out, her neighbors noticed the vehicle parked in front of the Grange residence, a white Chevy pickup truck. The man accompanying her was tall and bearded, but his features remained indistinct in the dimming light. Despite curious gazes, the man's identity eluded detailed description. Whispers of speculation floated among the bystanders, each trying to recall any peculiarities about the stranger or his vehicle. The scene set a quiet mystery. Neighbors exchanged glances, puzzled by Melissa's company. Though they could confirm the truck's appearance, their vague recollections of its driver did little to ease their growing concerns. As Melissa and the unknown man drove off into the twilight, an eerie silence settled in their wake, a premonition of trouble lingering just beneath the surface. The following morning, unease spread through Macomb. Melissa was nowhere to be found. Her absence was unsettling. By midday, concern morphed into alarm as calls to her phone went unanswered and her social media remained inactive, an unusual occurrence for someone as connected as Melissa. At the Macomb police station, officers began piecing together Melissa's last known actions. Initial investigations were fraught with frustration. No one had come forward with concrete information about her whereabouts or intentions for that evening. Detective Sarah Miller led the inquiry, determined yet faced with sparse evidence. Miller and her team combed through what little surveillance footage they could gather from nearby cameras. The task was painstakingly slow. Most cameras were poorly positioned or lacked clarity, but one stroke of luck came from a traffic camera at the edge of town. There it was, a fleeting glimpse of a white truck heading south on Highway 59B shortly after Melissa left home. The image wasn't crystal clear, but it offered a direction, a thread to pull at, in hopes of unraveling this tangled knot. With this new lead, Miller ordered an intensified search operation targeting areas south of Macomb. Officers were dispatched to canvass roadsides and check in with neighboring towns for any sign of Melissa or the mysterious driver. As days passed without further breakthroughs, tension among investigators mounted. Each passing hour seemed to stretch longer than before, amplifying the community's anxiety. Back at the station, maps were unfurled across desks as officers plotted potential routes and locations where they might find clues about Melissa's disappearance. Yet, under these layers of strategic planning lay an unsettling fear, a fear that time might not be on their side. Then came an unexpected twist. A call from a resident living near one of the areas under surveillance reported seeing a similar white truck parked along an isolated road late at night, the same night Melissa vanished. Detective Miller's heart raced with renewed urgency as she listened to this account. Could this be what they needed? She knew that every second counted, now more than ever. As officers prepared to follow up on this lead, an unspoken question hovered in their minds. Was it too late? With each step closer to finding answers about Melissa's fate came another step deeper into uncertainty. The search intensified as Miller hoped against hope that they were closing in on something tangible. Unbeknownst to them all, what they were about to discover would shake Macomb to its core. The morning sun broke through the trees lining Highway 59B, casting a harsh light on the grim scene unfolding at a drainage culvert. Detective Sarah Miller stood alongside her team, staring down at the carpet-wrapped figure that had been discovered by local hikers. The air was thick with an unsettling mix of anticipation and dread, a tangible reminder of the urgency that had driven them here. Forensics teams moved carefully around the scene, battling the challenges posed by water damage and exposure. The body was in a state of advanced decomposition, complicating initial identification efforts. Miller watched as they meticulously worked, knowing that every detail could be crucial in uncovering the truth about Melissa's disappearance. After hours of painstaking examination, a breakthrough came through dental records. It was Melissa Grange. The confirmation sent ripples of sorrow through Macomb, a town already on edge from the uncertainty of her fate. The community's worst fears had materialized, leaving them grappling with the realization that one of their own had met such a violent end. As news spread, an air of mourning settled over Macomb. Melissa's vibrant spirit was remembered in hushed conversations and solemn gatherings. Yet beneath this collective grief lay a simmering tension, questions about how and why this tragedy had befallen her. With identification confirmed, Detective Miller pivoted focus to examining the crime scene for additional clues. The culvert was a busy area, frequented by both locals and travelers, which threatened any potential evidence preservation. Yet Miller knew they had to proceed meticulously. Any oversight could mean overlooking critical information. Careful scrutiny of the site revealed carpet fibers caught in the surrounding brush, leading to the hypothesis that Melissa's body had been transported from another location. Traces of gunshot residue were also detected near the culvert's edge, suggesting it might have been the point of origin for her fatal assault. These findings deepened suspicions that this wasn't merely a spontaneous act, but rather one executed with calculated intent. The implication that Melissa had been moved post-mortem broadened their investigation radius and introduced new complexity to an already tangled case. Back at headquarters, maps were spread once more across desks as detectives plotted possible locations connected to these new clues. They pored over lists of residents who owned vehicles matching witness descriptions and considered areas where such an act could go unnoticed. As they connected these dots, Henry Grange's shadow loomed large over their discussions. But despite his swift confession, there were elements that remained unresolved, gaps in his timeline and questions about potential collaborators or motives beyond what he admitted. Detective Miller was acutely aware that these unanswered questions could hold keys to understanding Melissa's tragic end. She ordered an exhaustive review of all evidence collected so far, determined not to leave any stone unturned. Then came an unexpected twist. An anonymous tip received by dispatch claimed that on the night of Melissa's disappearance, a white Chevy pickup truck had been seen parked behind an abandoned farmhouse several miles out of town, one eerily similar to Henry's vehicle. Miller's pulse quickened at this revelation. Was this new lead connected? Could it provide answers, or merely deepen the mystery surrounding Melissa's death? With few certainties, yet numerous suspicions swirling around them, she knew they were edging closer to something significant. The farmhouse, a silent witness to untold secrets, beckoned ominously as their next destination. As preparations were made for this new search, one question lingered ominously in Miller's mind. What hidden truths lay waiting within its shadowed walls? Detective Sarah Miller stood with her team by the abandoned farmhouse, the chilly morning air biting through their jackets. The tip about the white Chevy pickup truck had led them here, fueling their hopes of uncovering crucial evidence. But as they surveyed the property, it became clear that without a warrant, their search would be stalled. Henry Grange, calm and defiant, met them at his front door. "You can't just come in here," he insisted, his eyes hard. Not without a warrant. His refusal was expected, yet frustrating. The team retreated to regroup, and within hours, they secured the necessary warrant to search Henry's property. Once inside, the tension in the air was palpable. Miller's eyes scanned the room, landing on a small stack of receipts on a cluttered desk. One stood out, a purchase of cleaning supplies dated September 15th, the very day Melissa disappeared. As they combed through Henry's belongings, another discovery added weight to their findings. In the corner of the garage lay a pair of work boots stained with what appeared to be dried blood. The sight sent a collective shiver through the team. These boots could be pivotal in linking Henry directly to Melissa's murder. With these discoveries in hand, Miller knew they needed forensic analysis to confirm their suspicions. She ordered the evidence bagged meticulously and transported to the county crime lab. This next step was crucial. Without scientific confirmation, their case against Henry remained circumstantial. At the lab, however, they encountered another hurdle: The facility was swamped with cases, each demanding immediate attention. The backlog threatened to slow down their progress significantly, but Miller pressed for expedited processing. Every delay felt like justice deferred. Days stretched into anxious waiting until finally the forensic results arrived. The stains on Henry's boots were indeed Melissa's blood, a revelation that sent shockwaves through the investigative team and solidified Henry's connection to her murder. This new evidence tightened around Henry like a noose, prompting investigators to press him further for details about that fateful night. Yet despite the mounting proof against him, Henry maintained an eerie calmness under questioning, a demeanor that left detectives unsettled. The tension in Macomb grew more palpable as news of these developments spread through hushed conversations and worried glances among neighbors. Speculation ran rampant about who else might have been involved or what other secrets lay hidden beneath Macomb's seemingly placid surface. Miller knew there was more to uncover. Henry's motives were only partially explained by his confession of wanting to pursue another woman. There had to be deeper layers yet unseen. Financial troubles or other clandestine affairs, perhaps. The investigation intensified as Miller and her team prepared for another round of interrogations with Henry. But before they could proceed further, an unexpected call came in. A woman claiming she had information about Melissa's last days alive wanted to meet. The caller's voice trembled with urgency and fear as she insisted on secrecy. "You don't know everything," she whispered. "There are things you need to see for yourself." Her cryptic words hung in the air like an unfinished melody. As Miller listened, her mind raced with possibilities. Who was this woman? What did she know? And could her revelations finally untangle the web surrounding Melissa's death? Determined to pursue this lead, Miller set up a meeting at a secluded location later that evening. She felt both anticipation and dread creeping up her spine as she prepared for what could be a turning point in their investigation. Just as dusk draped over Macomb once more, Detective Miller drove towards the meeting spot with questions swirling like leaves in an autumn storm, each one shadowed by an unsettling uncertainty about what truths might finally come into light. Detective Sarah Miller watched the clock tick slowly in the Macomb police station, her thoughts a whirlpool of uncertainty. The anonymous call from a woman claiming to know more about Melissa's last days had left her on edge. But there was no time to dwell on that now. With the warrant firmly in hand, it was time to confront Henry Grange with the weight of evidence they had painstakingly amassed. In the bright-lit interrogation room, Henry sat across from Miller, his demeanor stoic, yet betraying a hint of nervousness. Despite the mounting evidence, he remained evasive, attempting to deflect blame at every turn. "I loved Melissa," he insisted, his voice a steady monotone. "I would never hurt her." Miller leaned forward, eyes locked on his. "Then how do you explain the cleaning supplies purchased the day she vanished, or the blood on your boots?" Each question was a surgical strike designed to expose inconsistencies in his story. Henry hesitated, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. "Those are just coincidences," he mumbled, but Miller could see his facade cracking. Sensing an opportunity, she pressed further. "We know about your other relationship," she said, watching for a reaction. His eyes flickered momentarily, an involuntary betrayal of fear. The room seemed to close in around Henry as detectives exploited these inconsistencies, hinting at possible motives linked to his desire for another life. It was this breakthrough that set up their psychological strategy to wear him down until truth or fatigue would force him to reveal more. As hours passed, tension coiled tighter within the walls of the interrogation room. Finally, under relentless questioning and woven traps of logic, Henry's resolve began to crumble. In a low whisper, desperation tinging his words, he finally confessed, "I wanted out. I needed a new start." His voice broke with the admission, a chilling echo in the stark room. He spoke of dreams unfulfilled and desires that eclipsed his marital vows. Unaware of the recording devices capturing every word, he laid bare his motive. Melissa was an obstacle to a new life he envisioned with another woman. With this confession on record, Miller nodded to her team outside the room. The formal arrest was imminent. Henry's face fell as realization dawned, his world unraveling faster than he could comprehend. The weight of what he'd done seemed to settle over him like an oppressive fog as officers moved in to secure him in custody. News of his confession spread quickly through Macomb, stirring whispers and sparking debates about what drives someone to such extremes. But for Detective Miller and her team, there was little time for reflection. More pieces of this puzzle demanded their attention. Just as they prepared to wrap up this chapter of their investigation, another call came through, this time from an unexpected source, Melissa's sister. "You need to see something," she urged urgently over the phone. "There are things about Henry you don't know, things that might change everything." Her words lingered ominously in Miller's mind as she readied herself for yet another layer of truth awaiting discovery. She felt a shiver of anticipation mixed with dread as she considered what lay ahead. Each revelation seemed only to deepen the mystery further. As Miller hung up the phone and gathered her thoughts for this new engagement, she couldn't shake the feeling that despite Henry's confession, their journey into understanding Melissa's tragic fate was far from complete. The air inside Macomb's town hall was thick with a mix of anger and disbelief. News of Henry Grange's confession had spread like wildfire, igniting a fervor among the townspeople who gathered for an impromptu meeting. Detective Sarah Miller stood at the back, observing the palpable tension as residents took turns expressing their outrage. "How could this happen here?" one woman shouted, her voice trembling with emotion. "We trusted him. If Henry could do this, who else among us might be hiding something?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, each whisper a seed of doubt planting itself deeper within the community. The fear was tangible, an unsettling realization that their small town might harbor darker secrets. A man from the crowd raised his voice above the din, suggesting that Henry's actions might not have been solitary. "I heard he was into some shady business," he claimed. "How do we know he didn't have help?" These rumors, though speculative, fanned the flames of distrust and suspicion among neighbors who once felt secure in each other's company. The town hall's atmosphere grew heavier as tales of possible accomplices and illicit activities circulated, leaving everyone on edge about whom they could truly trust. As the meeting drew to a close, Detective Miller knew that while Henry's confession had provided some answers, it had also opened new avenues of doubt and inquiry. The community was left reeling, questioning their perceptions of those closest to them. Leaving the town hall, Miller headed towards the Grange family home, a somber task that awaited her as she sought more insights into Melissa's death. Upon arrival, she was met by a household divided between anger and grief. Inside, Melissa's family struggled to reconcile their love for her with their shock over Henry's betrayal. Emotions ran high as siblings and parents shared conflicting accounts of Henry's demeanor leading up to Melissa's disappearance. "He always seemed so normal," Melissa's mother lamented, her voice laced with pain. "But maybe we missed something." A sibling hesitated before speaking up, recalling overheard conversations that now seemed suspicious in hindsight. "I remember hearing him talking on the phone late at night," they said cautiously. "It was always hushed tones, like he didn't want anyone else to hear." This revelation hinted at the possibility of a third party involved, perhaps someone who aided or influenced Henry in his drastic actions. Detective Miller noted this lead carefully. It opened a thread that could unravel more about the true nature of Melissa's tragic end. As she exited the Grange home, Miller's mind whirled with questions yet unanswered. Who was on the other end of those calls? Could this unknown figure be key to understanding not only Henry's motives, but perhaps others entwined in this dark narrative? The road ahead promised no easy answers, only more complex layers to peel back as they sought closure for Melissa's grieving family and clarity for a community still grappling with shock. Back at her office, Miller reviewed all they had amassed so far: the evidence, confessions, and now these new allegations of possible accomplices. Each piece seemed to fit, yet left gaps that teased broader implications. As dusk settled over Macomb once more, Detective Miller realized that while Henry's arrest brought some semblance of justice for Melissa, it was clear her case had exposed fractures within their society, cracks where deception might still lurk unchecked. With resolve strengthened by this chilling thought, she continued her pursuit for truth, a truth that seemed ever elusive yet vital for peace in a town forever changed by its darkest secret.